After so many years of mediocre Silent Hill stuff, it's nice to be in a time where the classic survival horror franchise seems to be making a comeback with an amazing remake and a completely new, fun take on the series. And the worst movie of all time. Let's just forget about that. Getting back to it, Silent Hill F is the first completely new Silent Hill in a long time, and it's the first completely new Silent Hill that's actually good. So, without further ado, let's explore the hidden beauty in the effing fantastic game that is Silent Hill F. As always, let's first discuss the basics of gameplay. Players take control of Hinako Shimizu, a young girl thrown into the hellish world of the fog, trying to survive and figure things out. Like other Silent Hills, the main character has to solve puzzles if they want to advance, and put up a fight against monsters as they navigate through their new nightmare. Unlike other Silent Hills though, F certainly seems to be very oriented around combat for a good chunk of the gameplay. Now don't get me wrong, there were parts in the previous games where players had no choice but to take out their enemies. However, there were also a lot of parts, like a large majority of the game, where players could simply walk past their enemies and go to where they needed to be. There's only a few spots in this game where I felt like I didn't need to fight the monsters, so I simply ran away. And no, I'm not including the scripted scenes where the game expects the player to run away for obvious reasons. Speaking of the combat, F doesn't have any guns. After all, it takes place in a rural Japanese town in the 1960s, so firearms weren't really around during that time, so the combat is done exclusively through blunt force. Thankfully, this game's weapons combat is pretty good. It's kinda Souls-like in that Hinako can light or heavy attack with her weapon, take certain items to replenish and strengthen their health, stamina, and sanity, can dodge out of the way only a certain amount of times, and can stun their enemies by parrying their attacks. Previous games had it so players would have to awkwardly approach their opponent, try to hit their enemy, then run away as fast as they can, then rinse and repeat. And while that doesn't sound so bad, it's a lot worse when tank controls are factored into it. Homecoming's attack system is kinda like F's in that there's a light and heavy attack, along with dodging, but luckily F is nowhere near as bad as that game because Hinako can actually dodge out of the way of her enemies' attacks. And the heavy attacks stun their enemies, so taking on multiple enemies is more manageable. Hinako's weapons can break though, so players are gonna have to be careful with how much they use their weapons, even when they have kits to fix them. It doesn't matter that much anyways, because weapons are scattered throughout the normal world, so unless the player is fighting literally every single monster they come across, they'll never have to worry about not having a weapon. Aside from the weapons used in the real world, Hinako can use her demon arm after a certain chapter in the other world, and my god, I love this damn thing, it was so worth it. Beating the hell out of those abominations with this thing felt so good, and having a rage move for it was just the icing on the cake. I didn't expect a Silent Hill game to have a beatdown mode, but I welcome it with open arms. While fighting enemies, players are going to have to keep an eye on their health, stamina, and sanity. The health and stamina makes sense. Health is in literally every combat game ever, and introducing stamina to the series via this game is reasonable considering there would hardly be any challenge if Hinako could just viciously beat her enemies without having to stop. Hinako also runs faster than most other Silent Hill protagonists, and the game doesn't want the player to just run away from every enemy they see, so there's also these two factors about the stamina bar. I really appreciated the fact that stamina doesn't deplete unless Hinako is in combat. That made certain sections a lot easier, especially during my later playthroughs of this game. I also liked how fast Hinako runs in this game. James felt kinda slow as I played through the Silent Hill 2 remake, but Hinako's speed feels just right. Getting back to it, sanity was kind of a weird bar that I don't think contributed much to the game. It makes sense story-wise, but I don't really think it made a difference in any of the playthroughs I went through. It's a very easy bar to maintain, so it's not like it adds any additional or meaningful difficulty to this game. I know that it slowly damages players if it gets too low, but really the only places where my sanity got low were when I was trying to escape the other world, and even then, it was completely restored by the time I got back to the real world, so again, this bar is super easy to maintain, even without upgrading it, dismissing it of any gameplay value. F has actual good boss fights, something that's kinda missing in Silent Hill games. Each boss has their own pattern and weakness the player will have to learn about and use against their foe. It could also just be this game has actual good combat, something that's missing in pretty much every single Silent Hill, so the bar was set pretty low, all things considered. The boss fights with the wolf arm were especially entertaining, mostly because I loved using that thing. Something about its destruction is so satisfying. Really the only boss fight I didn't like was the Sasuke one. Her chain is such a pain in the ass to dodge. Silent Hill F has a limited inventory system, which is kind of a new thing for the series. Unfortunately, Hinako isn't a Mason, a Sunderland, a Townshed, a Grady, a Shepherd, or a Pendleton, so there's only so much this girl can hold at once. But, I mean, for a game more focused on combat than other Silent Hills, it totally makes sense. This game has to provide enough challenge to make itself engaging, but not insanely difficult. F has a trade-off no other Silent Hill has. The player gets a good combat system that works and doesn't feel sluggish or is limited by tank controls, but they can't carry everything at once, and will have to repair or get new weapons, which really isn't that much of a challenge in my opinion. Another reason that players should keep their inventory clear is so they can keep things like offerings, which give the players faith. You see, players can also upgrade their health, stamina, and sanity by saving up enough faith, which can be attained by selling certain items at the shrines, and Emmas, which are randomly found throughout the game. I quite like this upgrade system. It felt rewarding to have the right amount of items in my inventory that I could use whenever I got in trouble, and a few items to keep that I could sacrifice for faith. It made the effort of having a clear inventory so worth it. It made tough sections not as tough because I decided to use my brain. I guess I could have sold a few more things throughout my playthrough because I'm pretty sure I had 3 health packs when I beat the final boss on my first playthrough, which I did on hard mode, but at least I was more prepared for 4 more playthroughs after that. While still in the inventory, there is omamoris that players can pick up or randomly obtain from a Hokari, and they upgrade certain stats. In any other Silent Hill game, I'd say such upgrades would have been kind of weird, but since F is more combat oriented, these upgrades were very much appreciated, and players can only equip a certain amount of them at a time, so they're gonna have to think about which ones are and aren't worth it depending on their immediate situation. The player can upgrade the amount of omamori slots they have, but they come at a hefty cost, but in my opinion, they were so worth the price considering how much they helped me through this game. Some of the best omamoris can only be found by searching the environments of this game, which pushes players to fully explore every area and hopes for a way to give Hinako another advantage. One more thing about the inventory, I really enjoyed how easy it was to select my weapons and equipped items. Everything was only a button press or 2 away, rather than having to open up my inventory, scroll to what I wanted, then select it like older Silent Hills. It felt pretty close to Homecoming's inventory, which is like the best aspect of that game, so it's nice it somewhat ended up in here, whether or not it was intentional. Alright, let's talk about the obligatory puzzles of this game, a staple in every Silent Hill. I feel like the puzzles in this game are 50-50 in that some are just fine, while the others are a little too open for interpretation. I think the number one issue I have with the puzzles is that they're all connected into the story, so the hints that are given are symbolism for the literature of this game, and since the player is continuously learning the story through their playthroughs, the hints may not make sense at first. I can understand having the hints being symbolic past the first playthrough of the game, considering players will have the gist of everything by then, but having symbolic hints during their first playthrough is a little too much considering the player is still figuring everything out. Another part of the puzzle system I'll praise is it's super easy to look at the clues this game gives thanks to the dedicated journal button. Having to take pictures of stuff and jotting down things while I was playing the older games was a bit of a hassle, so praise to F to making sure that shit didn't get overcomplicated. After the player beats the game, they're allowed to keep all their stats and omamoris in New Game Plus mode, and they can find new routes and unlockables as well, such as the Sacred Sword. While I did like this side quest, it was pretty easy to attain the Mystical Blade. It's not like I had to cover every single centimeter of the map in order to find the statue, and then the offering. They kinda stick out, and the game even shows a vision as to where the offering is, so yeah, it's pretty easy. I wish it was a bit more cryptic. I will say though, I really appreciate the fact that the developers made it so the pieces of the Sacred Sword didn't have to be found again once the player got all of them for future playthroughs. That certainly made things easier, and less of a headache when getting all the endings. Players also get the demon arm at an earlier point in the other world, which you can probably guess is something I absolutely loved if my earlier comments about it are any consolation. New Game Plus also offers different cutscenes based on the route players choose during their run, and I love the fact the game has the courtesy to tell the player whenever they're about to skip a new cutscene. I appreciated the hell out of this disclaimer considering I went back to get all the endings but didn't want to miss any of the new content, but also didn't want to sit through all the same cutscenes again. I will say though, I'm not exactly sure what the difference between some of the new cutscenes were. I guess some of them had subtle differences that I just didn't pick up on. I think the only thing I didn't like about New Game Plus was there was a few enemy placements that were really dumb. Like, I don't know how exactly players were supposed to avoid some of these new placements. especially when they're more than likely speeding through their additional playthroughs because they see most of everything and just want to get the other endings. Well, that's enough of the gameplay. Let's get onto the story of this game. Unlike other Silent Hills, players have to beat the game multiple times in order to fully understand the story, and there's even cutscenes that will play out differently based on which route the player has chosen, and this was a genius idea in my opinion. Every ending in just about every other game in this franchise is open for interpretation, meaning there was really no canonical ending, with the exception of the first game considering the existence of Cheryl, or Heather in the third game, and Origins due to how that sets up the first game. S endings are all connected and give players pieces of the full story until they've gotten every piece that they need in order to understand the full picture, along with notes scattered throughout the game that give information as well. The flow of information is so good too. I really liked how it slowly starts off with Hinako's surroundings, her friends, family, situation, herself, and then as players get more and more endings and information, they learn a lot of the stuff is just her interpretation, and while a lot of what she thinks could be true, a lot of it could just be her fear and insecurities overcoming her rationality and jumping to conclusions. Alright, before we really cut deep into the story, let me give a brief rundown of everything just so we're all on the same page here. Hinako is a fairly average girl just trying to live her life by going to school, hanging out with her friends, along with other extracurricular activities. But there's trouble brewing in episode Gaeka. On the family side of things, Hinako's dad got himself into a large amount of debt and is having a hard time dealing with it financially and mentally. So he takes a lot of his frustrations out on his daughters and his wife. Junko, Hinako's sister, was there at a certain point in time to keep Hinako sane whenever his outburst would happen and give her support whenever she needed it. But one day, Junko got married and essentially disappeared. With Junko gone and not there to comfort her from her dad, Hinako created some resentment towards her dad and sister. She also hates her mom, believing that she should stick up for herself whenever her dad decides to be an angry drunk. Because of all this, Hinako is completely against the idea of marriage, believing that such a construct leads women to abandon their life before they tie the knot and become submissive towards their husband, no matter how bad things get. Unfortunately for Hinako, there's this guy named Kotoyuki, and he's an heir that wants to marry her because she saved him once when they were younger, and when he proposes the idea to her dad, he accepts it as he sees it as an easy way to get out of his debt. All of this terrifies Hinako due to her view on marriage. On the friend side of things, Hinako has noticed something now that she's older. It seems there's a way that boys and girls are to interact and view one another, almost like they're supposed to be enemies or polar opposites. She notices that her friend Rinko seems jealous about the connection she has with her mutual male friend Shu because Rinko has a crush on him. Well, once Hinako gets married, she goes crazy and murders everyone at her wedding, and while it's not explained why, it's most likely because she felt like she couldn't be herself anymore and hated the fact she would have to leave her life behind for her husband. In other words, she wanted her happiness and life decisions to be all hers, and saw this marriage as a threat to this, so she decided if she can't control her life, no one else will. That's one of the endings. Another shows Hinako getting married without the massacre, another shows Shu preventing the marriage, and the final ending, which is regarded as the canonical true ending, the wedding doesn't happen at all, without Shu's involvement this time. Rather, Hinako takes some time to decide what she wants for her future, and it's implied Kotoyuki backed down from marrying Hinako right away. There's so much symbolism in this game. It's crazy the amount of stuff that's implied, but not hard for the player to pick up on. As I was writing the script for this video, I only had to look up a few pieces of information so I could completely understand the story, but other than that, I knew just about everything I needed to after I got the last ending. Anyways, let's get onto the symbolism of this game to really understand how deep everything is, and just for general discussion purposes. The fog represents Hinako's clouded head, almost as everything she's dealing with is overwhelming, scary, and in some ways, hurts her. It also represents the future in that she can only see so far ahead, and what she does see terrifies her. The fog monster clearly represents Hinako as a married woman, as it's the same outfit Junko, her married sister, has on, and the demon arm represents Hinako's connection with Kotoyuki. The fog monster's murder of present Hinako, Sasuko, and her parents are Hinako's perception of how being married will force her to leave her present life behind and become servant to her new husband. To further push the narrative that everything is just Hinako's perception and not actual reality, each character in this game is quite representative of Hinako, or represents a major part of her. With Sasuko, they have sporty traits along with always doing good in school. However, part of them have a fear in the back of their minds of abandonment. Sasuko fears all of her friends will abandon her, while Hinako fears she'll have to abandon all of her friends when she gets married and has to settle down. That exact thing happened to her sister Junko, which scares the shit out of Hinako considering how much her friends mean to her. As I mentioned before, Junko's departure after her marriage also unsettled Hinako. It made her resentful of her society and environment because of how girls are expected and pushed to get married even if they don't really want to. It's almost as if Junko exists to taunt and scold Hinako, almost like she's saying, "There's nothing you can do about your future. You will get married, you will abandon your friends, and you will have no say-so in any of these matters." To further support this, when Sasuko learned that Hinako and Kotayuki had a marriage arrangement, she told the entire town about it. They started calling her a traitor because her fears became true. She's been abandoned. I think part of this is the reason why the fog monster kills Sasuko first. She was hit the hardest by this news and felt a part of her died because of it. Before we move on from Sasuko, if the player obtains the key to her mailbox and runs back to her house to use it, there's a letter that mentions Sasuko more than likely doesn't have autism, rather just mild signs of it. I thought that was kind of interesting because such a topic wasn't talked much about in the 1960s, the time period of this game, so I looked up when autism was coined, and turns out it goes all the way back to 1914 with Eugen Bleuler coming up with the term. What does that have to do with the story? Nothing really, I just thought that was interesting and wanted to bring it up. Rinko's comments towards Hinako about talking like a man or not acting like a girl represents how she feels on how her society feels about her personality. Hinako doesn't really care how feminine or masculine her personality or actions are. She just wants to be herself, but apparently there's a certain way she has to act just because she's a girl. Hinako mentions in her journal how after a certain point in time, girls and boys look at each other differently, almost like they're completely different and almost like they're enemies, so maybe Rinko's mention of Hinako's behavior could be a nod to this note. It's funny to think that Rinko and Sasuko are kind of opposites of each other. Sasuko didn't want Hinako to leave and was distraught when she heard about the marriage thing, while Rinko was excited for Hinako to leave because she felt she had more of a chance with Shu with her absence. Speaking of which, Shu is reflective of Hinako's more compassionate side, considering both characters seem to have people's backs and don't see each other based on their gender alone. They're both also fairly level-headed. Hinako does have her outbursts, but she didn't shut down like Rinko when the going got rough. Shu also puts Hinako at kind of a love crossroads. She does trust Kotayuki and does develop some kind of feelings for him, but Shu's always been there for her when she needed him. And they certainly have a much deeper bond than that of Kotayuki and Hinako, so it's not easy to deal with these new emotions when she feels they should perhaps be directed towards Shu and not Kotayuki. So Hinako's mom kind of goes with the whole fear of marriage thing, but I think she's also a part of Hinako that sees the good in people. You see, if the player chooses the final ending route, then Hinako has a conversation with her mom, and her mom tells Hinako that she loves her father, and that he's going through a rough time at the moment, so he's taking it out on them, but she knows there's a good husband in him. He's just not great at showing it in fear of seeming like a weak father. This conversation helps Hinako understand that marriage doesn't have to be a controlling thing where the wife has to be submissive to her husband. Rather, it's supposed to be a special bond where two people have each other's backs, no matter what, because they love each other. Getting back to the whole seeing good in others aspect, Hinako talks openly in her journal about her friends and family, and while she does write a few negative things here and there about them, she does ultimately write about her peers' good qualities and why she's friends with them or why she stays with them. Furthering my point, the cutscene that plays after the one we just discussed has Hinako's father apologizing to her daughter about all the bad things he's done, and while one side of her is completely dissing him, the other is understanding and gets where he's coming from. Speaking of which, Hinako's dad is reflective of her more destructive side. Hinako really beats the hell out of some of the enemies in this game, even when they're far past being done for, and not for nothing, I totally understand why, but this violence could be something she inherited from her father. Things like letting her friends die in one of the other world chapters, her lashing out at her dad if the player does the standard red capsule route, and her statement where she claims she hated her parents, wishing they were dead, and then subsequently killing figurative versions of her parents, can all be used as evidence that Hinako has a destructive side. Fox Mask is, of course, Hinako's future husband, Kotayuki, and he's there to more so guide Hinako into her new life, rather than be a reflection of her. Everything in his world seems scary, unreal, and foreign, but with his guidance, Hinako can understand what romantic love is like, and understand what it's like to have a caring significant other. Everything she's been told about marriage and having a significant other has been tainted by her parents and her friends, but Kotayuki takes things slow and shows her there's nothing to be afraid of. I don't think he's a bad dude. I genuinely feel like he wants to love Hinako and give her a good life, but he can be protected to the point of being possessive, which is reflected in the Fox wedding ending when Hinako states, "Stop treating me like I'm an object," as Fox Face and Shu bicker. Ultimately though, What leads me to believe he's a good person and cares for Hinako is, if the final ending is to be considered canon, Kotoyuki doesn't get angry when Hinako decides to delay the marriage arrangement. He lets Hinako decide what she wants to do first. If Kotoyuki truly was controlling, he would have gone through the marriage regardless of Hinako's cries, but he sympathizes with her and lets her decide her future. Well, that's everything I wanted to say about the symbolism, but there's a few other things I wanted to mention about the story. The cutscenes where there's multiple Hinakos on screen were so good. It was so interesting how each side of Hinako argued with one another. It really gave players a deep understanding of her perception of the world and provided interesting dialogue. The true ending was a real nice wrap up to everything as well. Silent Hill endings, most of the time, leave a bittersweet feeling, like so much was lost and some things never got resolved, but it's all over now. There's still a brighter future to look forward to. But I feel like F's final ending feels so satisfying in that it doesn't solve everything, but it's still mostly a happy ending. Hinako realizes there's two parts of her that are at conflict with one another, and she needs to figure out how to make them coexist. One side of her wants to be independent, take control of her destiny, make her own mistakes, and learn from them, and she doesn't want to be pigeonholed just because she's a girl. On the other side, she does want to express her feminine side and experience all kinds of emotions, including love, but she's afraid to express too much of this in fear of becoming like her mother, or fear of being seen as weak and overly sensitive. I know I mentioned this throughout the video, but if the cutscenes and endings weren't enough, Hinako also has her own journal where players can read the character's private thoughts and use them to further piece everything together, and it also updates as the player keeps going through the game. Hinako even provides beautiful drawings in her journal to further add on to the enjoyment of exploring through the entries. This was such a great addition. It really gave Hinako much more personality by letting players explore her most personal thoughts, and it also made parts of the story easier to understand. And it wouldn't be a true Silent Hill without a UFO ending, and luckily for us, F delivers the goods. It's even stylized in the form of a 1960s manga, which is just so good, and the way it's supposed to be. I think the only problem I have with the story is that some important details, not a lot, are hidden within small notes Hinako can pick up and read, and I know that's a thing in every Silent Hill. My problem lies in the fact these notes change based on the route players choose during their run, and after a certain point, I just kinda got bored of reading them. Now while I did enjoy getting all the endings for this game, I really only did these playthroughs to get the endings more than anything else. So I kinda skipped all these small other things that I didn't need to interact with to trigger the desired final cutscenes. Silent Hill F looks pretty good for the most part, and the new Japanese environment feels refreshing from the suburban settings of previous games, but doesn't stray too far from the feel brought by the fictional American city this game revolves around. It's not like all the environments are completely new. F wasn't the first game to have a school, a countryside, or an ever-changing house. So familiar things like these help keep it in touch with the series feel. I think the other world feels pretty different from other games though, and it makes sense. You see, just about every other game has the other world as this super distorted, warped, and coded in red environment. It's very messy and kind of random in its structure. Silent Hill F though, the other world looked beautiful. Everything looks so carefully crafted and like it was made to be appealing, and considering the lore, that does make sense. But it was so hard to be scared with this game because of how beautiful it looks and how creative the environments were. Anytime there was a cutscene with the fog monster, I couldn't be unsettled because her design is just so cool. Speaking of which, the monster designs in this game were also pretty cool and fit in with the time period and setting perfectly. It's crazy how many liberties this game took, and yet it still feels pretty in line with the Silent Hill franchise. I think the only designs I didn't really like were the mom and dad boss designs. Dad is just himself, and mom was another enemy that appears multiple times throughout the game, so the boss fight was kind of a letdown. Otherwise, the boss designs for Hinako's peers were awesome, so menacing and creepy. Some of the ending cutscenes look so damn good too. Like this shot from the Fox wedding ending pleases every inch of my brain's occipital lobes. Oh my god, is this pure cinema or what? Alright, well that's all the good stuff about the visuals. There is one big complaint I have about them, and that is that right there. Yeah, so the gameplay and cutscenes have two different types of lighting, and it would constantly give me whiplash. 1 second, the lighting looks so beautiful, everything was so crisp and clear, then boop, back to the standard lighting. I think I know why they did this. After playing the Silent Hill 2 remake, I noticed how that game doesn't have the lighting issue, or choice I should say. The cutscenes and gameplay look pretty much the same, but the performance of that game also kinda sucks. I was only able to get past 60 frames with DLSS frame generation on and ray tracing off, and even then, there were certain sections where I was badly dropping frames. I didn't have this issue in Silent Hill F at all. I easily got over 100 frames in this game without having to use frame generation at all. The worst frame drops I experienced were minor hiccups during the sections where a lot of enemies were on the screen, but otherwise, F ran pretty well, and I'm guessing it's because of the inferior lighting during gameplay. I like how Hinako gave the map some character by adding small illustrations here and there, which also helped players understand what locations they already visited and what was at them. The sound design of Silent Hill F is pretty damn good. The jingles of the menus and pickups, the crunch and jabs of the fighting animations, and the roars and clicks of the enemies were all so good. Every little piece immersed me in this fictional Japanese town. Also, the Vine Boom sound effect is in this game. I laughed my ass off when that happened. It was so unexpected, and I know it's just a generic soundbite that anybody can use, but still, it was pretty funny regardless. The voice acting in this game is pretty good too. The person that played Hinako did an amazing job with portraying a troubled youth. It was almost as if the actress fully understood Hinako's pain and let it all out when reading the script. I'll tell you what, I got real uncomfortable during those scenes where Hinako yells at her parents. I had to do that awkward look down at the floor gesture, despite the fact what was unfolding wasn't even real or relevant to me at all. I wasn't the biggest fan of Silent Hill F's soundtrack, but I think it's good for what it is. You see, I love pretty much all the game's soundtracks. Most of the songs have their slow, ambient parts, but then, somewhere during the tune, things pick up and it sounds like an actual song rather than just ambience. After all, the ambience is more to ease in the melody of the song, so they fit in better with the player's environment. F's soundtrack feels very ambient, like there's not a lot of melody in them, and I will say, it does fit in pretty damn well with the designs of this game, but listening to it on its own just isn't my thing. That's not to say all the songs in this game are like that, it just feels like a great majority of them are. It could also be that the soundtrack uses a lot of instruments I'm not very familiar with due to its Japanese influence, so the foreignness of these different timbres are throwing me off some, especially compared to the familiar sounds of guitar, drums, and pianos from the other games. Another reason why I don't like this soundtrack that much is it's missing a song with Mary Elizabeth McGlynn on vocals, and just for the record, I totally understand why that's the case. I hope that Townfall game has her. She's such an icon. Well, that's everything I had to say about Silent Hill F. The game appealed to me with its fun, more action-oriented gameplay, and beautiful, creative visuals, but it really hooked me with its deep, interesting, unfolding story that just kept getting better and better. While the puzzles were a bit asinine, they were fun for the most part. While Silent Hill F does go off the beaten path in terms of the conventions of this series, I kinda like this direction. I understand Silent Hill is supposed to be about a creepy fictional American town, but honestly, I think taking the vibes and scare factor of these games and injecting them into other places and settings could work well. I'm just saying, how often can we have games where someone goes to Silent Hill again and again without the protagonist going to the same places to do the same things and similar puzzles? Anyways, besides the game, there's a novelization of Silent Hill F that I would love to read, but it's only in Japanese, so yeah, that's not happening. Who knows, maybe one day it'll be translated into other languages. You might be wondering why exactly I need to read the novelization if I already played the game, and that is, the novelizations, or at least the other Silent Hill novelizations, have the main character's thoughts directly from their mind, while players have to extrapolate how the character feels through their dialogue and body language in the games. So, it'd be nice supplemental material. I guess we already know a lot about what goes through Hinako's mind in this game, but still, it'd be a nice read. Well, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you have a good day and spread your wings and fly away, little bird.